Okay, and we're live on Facebook. Perfect. So, good morning, everybody. I am thrilled to be here this morning hosting one of my favorite people from DC. Julie, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Betty. It's so nice to be here.
I know it's great to have you. So, Julie, I've known you for a few years now. I
That
think
is
it's
right.
been over like 10 years. The first time I met you was you were at the White House, and I was doing my dissertation, and you came to me via General McKicklider, who I had interviewed for my dissertation also, and I started asking around. So, does anybody know another value-centered leader in the military who leads with values, creates unprecedented results, and is just somebody who just totally gets it? And your name kept popping up. So we met, and at the time, I think you worked at the White House, and you were working on nuclear defense. Yes.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And then what are the consequences of management and all of that in a post a nuclear incident and all of that? So very much. Oh my goodness, we don't have a nuclear war here, but Brett was at the Bible at the study this morning, and he said, "Well, it's not a nuclear war, but it's a COVID war." So very apropos to what we're dealing with. And then the next time we met, you were at the Pentagon, and so you had a senior military position, and then you went back to the White House, and then we went to your retirement party, and here you are.
Right.
And I was so thrilled to hear you're going to be writing a book on some
Right.
of your experiences, having worked for 3 administrations and all of that. So we have a fun packed morning. Is there anything that you want to say about your career before we get into share with us, share with the group about your career in the
Thank,
military?
thanks, Betty. Yes. So, a lot of people are a little bit taken aback when I tell them that my history is and training is in recovering from a post-apocalyptic world. I'm one of those Cold War dinosaurs where we had the doctrine that we had to fight through and win on a nuclear battlefield, and so. Uh, my job would be to sit in the back pocket of the commander and tell him, "Sir, you cannot send your troops in that direction; they'll get lethal dose." And so I would help them manage that nuclear battlefield in terms of fallout and radiation exposure. So that's my background. I got off of active duty after the Gulf War One, and while I was in the reserves, I didn't know it at the time until I came back onto active duty after 9/11. Was that we got away from that Cold War doctrine. So it was no longer move through a nuclear battlefield and win, but at that point, we didn't have the mutually assured destruction doctrine anymore. It was, go around the nuclear incident and continue to fight. So when I came back, I was moved into a larger weapon of mass destruction role and helped build the National Guard civil support teams, build them from a concept to an actual operational entity that's available in every single state and territory here in the United States. And with my technical background, I helped with what's the analytical capability that you need to be able to detect and identify nuclear, biological, and chemical agents of concern. So from there, they discovered me and pulled me over into the Bush administration, where I worked a lot of the National Guard issues, emergency response. They also wanted me to do kind of how are we with our gaps in responding to a terrorist in the area that I was given the one for the chemical terrorism. They had just finished up a nuclear terrorism look, and they were in the middle of the bio terrorist research.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I was part of that pool, and from there, it was kind of in the middle of that Katrina happened, so they pulled me back over to response. And then we got into building up what then was known as the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office and some other things. So from there, I was pulled back to the Pentagon, and a couple years later, was pulled back over onto the National Security Council of the Obama administration, and kind of picked up the reins and helped with the identifying as we look at how do we respond to any kind of WCBRN at that time, because a lot of we're having a lot of explosives near misses, thank God. What do we do to detect, identify, and respond to those types of events? And so I was able to help with the national policy there. As you said, I went from there with my explosives expertise over into one of the organizations that the military had in helping our warfighter there in Iraq and Afghanistan respond to and put to kind of bed the IED problem set. And then from there, pulled back onto the Trump administration to again work a little bit of the WMD, but then they put in a new a directorate called Emerging Technologies, and I was asked to come over and be a senior advisor to that directorate. So pretty exciting experiences that I got to have while I was living here in Washington, D.C. I retired, as you said, last fall, moved back to Oregon in November. My husband still works here in D.C., so we were doing a bi-coastal arrangement, and I was here visiting at the beginning of March when we both looked at each other and said, boy, we sure know what's coming. So I decided to stay here and just live the lockdown through with my husband here in Washington, D.C. So I'm on past 130 days of voluntary lockdown here in the house, and really looking back on all the things I learned about the resilience after a large scale global event like this. Learning a lot, and having some things validated and other things going, I don't think we got that right.
Yeah, no kidding. I think when I see your career and when I take a 30,000-foot level of your career, what's fascinating about it, there's so many things that are fascinating. We've had several conversations. We can't cover it all in 45 minutes. And and thank you so much for being part of my book. I'm forever grateful. But in your career, you have had experience in policy and also in response. So from a leadership perspective, from a business perspective, for those of you who are watching, it's as if you were the CEO of the company, and then you go out and you implement whatever it is that you are creating the strategy. So you are a strategist and you're also an implementer. You mobilize, you're able to mobilize, and you're able to create mobilization and a response at a national level and at a very large level. So this whole idea of being able to mobilize, and I get asked that a lot, how do you mobilize? How is it that you do this? How do you mobilize? And so going from policy and really understanding every single piece that is contingent upon the policy and that is also affected by, and then turning it around and putting yourself into the implementers and into the receivers end. So you have this incredible ability to do both. And please comment on that.
I think every leader does, right? Because a leader's responsibility is to cast the vision, right? Where are we going? And if you can cast a vision and get your people on board, then the next thing is to build your team, right? And that's every manager's responsibility. And so as a leader, whether you're a COO or a CEO, there's a building the team responsibility. And then once you got the team on board, they capture your vision, they know where you're going, they want to be part of the team, then you accomplish the task. It's that easy. But if you don't cast the vision, what happens is no one knows where they're going. And if you don't build the team, everyone wants to go in their own direction. And so you never get to accomplish the task. So a leader always looks at that threefold portion, right?
Yes. And the great leaders do it best.
Good. Yes.
Because you can, this morning when we're talking about, you can be given the title and then you come in and you say, well, here's the title, so do what I say.
Right.
Or you can come in and be a true leader and really be able to put yourself in all of the people's positions and create the strategy and cast the strategy with that background and with that understanding of how is it going to feel for the people, as well as what are the results that are being created.
That's right. That's right. And every leader does it differently. But if your people don't understand the vision, the grand vision or the small vision, they'll never feel part of the accomplishing it, because they don't ever understand it. And then if they do understand it, but they don't want to be part of the team, in other words, they just want to be a bunch of individuals that are working toward a common goal, you lose the efficiencies, like, because everybody's going to go at it their own way. And to some point you want to allow that, but if they work, like if everybody's in the boat, you all give them an oar, you give them all an oar, right, and everybody decides to do their own thing,
yes,
you may or may not get to your task. But you really want them to feel like they're part of something bigger, and that and that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? At that point, it doesn't matter what your task is or what your goal is, you're going to accomplish it, because you've got people knowing where they're going and they're doing it together.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we've gotten some commentary already from our friends on Facebook. Let's see. Maria, good morning, Dr. Betty and General Julie Bentz. Judy Nichols, good morning. Phil, who was one of my professors at Pepperdine, and dear friend, nice to be here. Thanks. Clemencia, good morning, General Julie Bentz and Dr. Betty. So a lot of people, Prestige Protocol, that's Mina Martinez, and she was with Boeing. She teaches etiquette courses, corporate etiquette, which is protocol, right? Yes. How important is protocol? Good morning, Dr. Betty and General Julie Bentz. How wonderful this opportunity to see you both in this platform. Paola, good morning from Texas. Excited for this call. Clemencia, good morning. Linda, a leader's responsibility is to cast the vision, so when you build the team to accomplish into the task of the vision. Brilliant example. And then Sophia, who is a student and a mentee in Boston. Julie, what an honor to hear your lesson on leadership. Thank you so much for your service. It's impressive and inspiring. So I think we're off to a good start.
And we've only started. My goodness.
I know, we haven't even gotten started. Okay, so let's get to the first point. And we talked about beforehand, and I posted what we were going to be talking about. Yes, Gabrielle, San Diego's represented also. I saw you, in Rochelle also. So timeout, we've been put into a timeout, and I love that you use that nomenclature, because that's exactly how it feels. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, for those of us who are staying in anyway, it just feels like it's a timeout. So tell us about that nomenclature and why you choose that.
You bet. So think about our use of the term timeout, right? We put our kids in timeout, and the question is, why do we put our kids in timeout? And it doesn't matter if you are like me, locked down in the house, or if you're going out. We as a globe are put on timeout. Yes. And we put our children in timeout for a specific purpose, is they are in an environment where they're not handling themselves well. So you pull them out of that environment, you stick them in a corner, and you give them a pause. You give them a chance to get their breath. You give them a chance to change their behavior, so that when they are put back into that environment, they can handle it in a different way, right?
Yes.
That is the common reality of anybody who has little kids who throw a tantrum, or are in an environment and they're behaving poorly, or the environment is not an environment where they have the skill set to handle themselves, right? So you pull them out, put them in a timeout. We as a globe are in this timeout. And so the question is, how are we using that time out, right? It's a chance for us to change our behavior, because we are going to go back into that environment. And I don't want to go back into it the way I came out of. I wasn't handling myself well. I don't think the globe has been handling itself well. What an incredible
Opportunity.
perspective and opportunity for us to change our behavior in this time, because that's what's been given to us is time. It's something that is foreign to most leaders, to have this understanding of what I got some time here.
And Julie, not to mention, not to, and I'm taking the liberty of calling you Julie because
Please
you're
do, buddy.
my dear friend. Thank you so much. But not only are we coming back, but we're coming back to a different environment, right? So where the rules of the game were different, and we talked about this right before, our environment, I mean, how wonderful that I actually get to see you on Saturday mornings now because of COVID, right? Because of Zoom and now I'm in your home, you're in my living room. So it's a totally different environment.
Yeah.
So we're being put into this timeout. We get an opportunity to think about our behavior, our values, our virtues, everything that you're talking about. And then we're coming out into a different world.
Right. But think about it, Betty. Why are we coming out into a different world? It's the exact same way as when I take a little kid out of an environment that he's not equipped to handle at the moment. You put him out. This environment, by the fact that that child has been taken out of, changes. It does.
Yes.
So even though I'm saying I'm putting him back in that environment, it's a different environment because this environment has changed and this
And that person's
kid
so,
has changed.
yes.
Right? That's where we're coming back to. And everybody has to understand we're going to go back to it. Have you taken this time out and have you changed your behavior in order to have a different experience coming back in? And if you haven't, I have some ideas for you. So,
Yes, you do. Well, we've encountered, and we're on our 106th day of our prayer meeting every morning. Excuse me. And so, with 106 days behind us, I have heard anywhere between, on the high side, oh my gosh, we get to pivot again. Let me just change my business and what opportunities are there? And on the high end. And then on the low end, it's, oh my goodness, I am cooped up in my house. What am I going to do? All the way to depression, to the elderly, a lot of the elderly losing their will to live because they don't have a purpose anymore. They don't get to see their grandchildren and all of that. So we're seeing the entire spectrum. Let's talk about your back to the basics idea, and
sure.
how does that play into this incredible diversity of behavior and reactions that are happening in our world, because it's touching the entire world now.
Right. So, I mean, by back to the basics, I know with me being here, I'm no longer going out shopping. I'm no longer going out doing any kind of entertainment. I'm no longer going out for anything, right? So I'm at over 130 days of voluntary lockdown here in the house. And so because of that, I have found that I'm no longer in that world where I'm thinking about my wants. I'm strictly in a world of thinking about my needs, right? I mean, like we were talking earlier, I'm cooking every one of my meals now, right? I am, I'm not going shopping. So I'm taking last year's wardrobe and I've pulled my sewing machine out for the first time in, I don't know, 30 years. And I'm sewing up things because, I'm bored with what I had before. So I'm using the time. We're able to organize and have an understanding of, where are all our files, all those things we kept pushing off for a rainy day, or, just getting some understanding of what we've got, so that as we move forward into our life, that big huge shell on the back of the snail can be a lot smaller, right? That makes me more agile, more mobile, more available for whatever comes my way, right? So I'm putting a lot of stuff that I've saved for a rainy day and I'm getting it done. All right, so back to the basics. There's this fundamental simplicity of getting to not what I want, but what I need. Because once you figure that out, now all of a sudden you get to redefine what you want. In other words, do you want to go back to all of that stuff? Okay, you can. It'll come back at some point. But right now, you're being told, here is your baseline. right? How freeing is that?
Yes.
Because up until this pandemic, we were so crushed by the needs, the quote needs of what I had to do, etc. When now we're realizing, well, actually, I didn't need to do that. That was more of a, an added bonus of what I could do with my time, and
Mhm.
that's where I chose to use it, right? So now what we're doing is we're coming back to a very simplistic baseline that now we can say, okay, this is what I need. Now I get to look forward in my future on what do I want? Because I've shed a ton of stuff behind me, and I don't know if I want to put it back back in my shell. The
You
other good thing, Betty, about this is that this idea that um, uh, no, I'll pop in on you. I interrupted you. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
no, it's okay because I was thinking, as you're thinking about needs versus wants, and it's a simplistic way to live your life, and it brings you right back. And I always talk about values, you know that, and right back to what's truly important. And I want to have a mirror to what we're talking about at home, to also from a leadership perspective to what we're talking about at work. It's not any different. It doesn't have to be different. What we do at home
Right,
and what we do at work. What do
right,
we really want
right.
versus what do we really need?
Yeah, and for the person that's at the office, my husband who's been teleworking forever keeps saying I'm at work. I'm just not at the workplace.
Right.
Um, right. The folks that are out there in the work environment, right? You now have the opportunity of figuring out what is your must do list versus your nice to have list, right? What's that baseline? Because again, if you start with that, you have the flexibility and the agility to recraft. We went in this direction, we spent a lot of time and effort and money over here. It was good, but this might be the time to say, okay, my baseline still remains here, but now let me try, I don't know, let me try this. Or, no, this is really important. And I see why. People are struggling right now because we don't have this going on. Let's get it back. Right. So as a leader, you're seeing those things that, dropped off the face of the earth and no one noticed.
Exactly.
Let it stay off the face of the earth if no one noticed.
Yes. If no one noticed, then it wasn't that important after all. And I think about so many different things. So from a leadership perspective, when we're trying to keep the costs down, what are the things that we let go of? Well, maybe you have coffee instead of having a very eloquent steak and lobster dinner with that client. And maybe having coffee gets the thought away from the food and into the relationship more, gets the thought away from the place that you chose to have rather than and put it right into the other person. And so maybe the dynamics begin to happen that are more humanistic dynamics, more one-on-one conversation, where the conversation is more intimate, more intimate dialogue where we get to really know each other, and then we get to make choices that are more informed rather than making the choices based on the superfluous things on the outside, the shiny objects.
Right.
What I call the shiny objects, we make the decisions based on the true essence of the person. Do I really want to do business with this person? Do I want them to come into my sanctuary of business, if you will?
Right.
So I love the idea of going back to the basics and the simplicity of it, because when you get to the core of it, it's really simple, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I
As
will.
complex as it could seem.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so one of the blessings there of the simplistic approach is, um, like, I'm back in a great connection with my mentor back when I was a young major in the Army, And he's been helping me really kind of grasp and understand the Black Lives Matter movement, and he's just been really amazing in um, kind of helping me get into that space, right? And what was interesting is, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, but a lot of people have a very superficial relationship where it grows into a deep respect, but you kind of are like, hey, what'd you do? How are you doing? See
Yep.
anything interesting? What's interesting happening in your life? And like
Yeah.
I have almost daily conversations with my sister, and we get done quickly at that point. And
Yeah.
so the fact that you reach deep in and say, okay, now that we got that out of the way, how are you doing?
Yes.
Like what's going in on inside of you, like how
Yep.
are you changing? What was the Here's a good question. What was an aha moment that you had today,
Yeah.
right? And allowing these relationships, even these business relationships, even the mentor mentee relationship, to go deeper, because
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of extraneous things that we can talk about, right? So
Yeah. I love that. I'm just writing that down. What was an aha moment you had today? Uh, it reminds me of when my kids were little, they would come home and I would ask them, so who did you make a difference for today? And
perfect.
that was the question at the end
That
of the
was it.
day. And
That's it.
that went into talk about simplicity, right?
Yeah.
So let's pivot a little bit to use the common word these days, or the popular word these days. Julie, you have been leading a Bible study at a very special place, and you've just been such an amazing leader, and you've done so much, and always you get us into what's truly important. And what I've noticed in in our dialogue, when we sit in dialogue, it's always, did you notice this, and get us right back to what was truly important. In the essence of the stories, when we read from different parables, what was the essence of the story? And you encourage that collaboration between all of us. um, the third topic that we talked about, speaking about, and for those of you who are on Facebook, please, you have an opportunity to ask any question, and Julie will answer most of them. Unless you ask something that's top secret, she won't be able to. But if you have a question, this is your moment. And Julie is here for you, for all of us, to be able to have healthy dialogue. It's not meant to be a monologue. So please take advantage and ask questions. That's why I asked Julie, talk to us about your history, talk to us about what you're up to. You notice that she's incredibly complex, and yet the simplicity of the woman behind all of this is just so beautiful. Take advantage, and if you have any questions, please feel free. I don't see any questions here. I see a lot of comments and no questions so far. So let's go ahead and pivot over to virtues are habits. And why is it important? And talk to us about virtues, and talk to us about habits, and how those two can cohabitate. And why is that important for us right now in the middle of COVID, to pay close attention and to put a spotlight on these?
Right. So virtues are habits, right? That they don't come naturally, right? A virtue, think of it as like somebody giving you a guitar, and so you got a guitar. That's my virtue. But until I learn how to play it, it sits in a closet and gathers dust. That's what a virtue is. It's something we need to practice. And what's interesting is, with our time in this COVID-19 timeout, the question to ask is, how many of us want to use this time to build enduring qualities that will fundamentally change the fabric of society? I want to do that. That's how I am using my time in COVID-19. So how do I do it? Well, one of the key phrases that I have been focused on for these many months is this call that Jesus gave us in his last commandment, right? And that is to love one another as I have loved you. Now, it's different from the two great commandments in the Judeo-Christian heritage of love God with your whole heart, mind, body, and strength, and to
Mhm.
love your neighbor as yourself. And I would say that the reason that Jesus' commandment is different is that everything I am, I worship God with. It could be small, it could be large, whatever it is, that's what I have to give. That's it, right? My neighbor I love like I love myself. Well, if I don't love myself very much, I'm not going to love my neighbor very much either, right? But the commandment that Jesus gives is love each other as I loved you, right? So I am locked down with one other person in this house. I call him my apostolate of one, and I'm using him as my practice. I won't call him a punch bag because that's not what I'm doing here. But he's the guy I get to practice on, my apostolate of one. And
Petri dish, basically.
the petri dish. That's a good one. Thank you, Betty. So, um, so the big aha moment I had in this practice is that how does Jesus treat me when I am irritating and when I'm irritable, when I am not doing right, when I'm, you know, when anyone else would kind of give me a what for? I have noticed in my life, Jesus never reprimands me. He doesn't. He doesn't get angry with me. He doesn't go passive aggressive on me. He doesn't get sarcastic with me. Jesus doesn't treat me like that at all, even when I'm at my worst. He's gentle with me. He's kind. He's gracious. He's merciful. That's how Jesus treats me when I'm at my worst. So in my apostolate of one, when I find that he is causing me to be irritable or I find him to be irritating, I now think about how would Jesus respond to him? Like if I were doing that, how would he respond to me? He'd be kind. He'd probably throw in some humor. He'd lighten the environment. And so as I look at what do I do with my apostolate of one, how do I put myself into that environment where in an irritating or irritable environment, I can't be passive aggressive. I can't be sarcastic. I can't be mean. I can't give tit for tat because that's not what Jesus would do. And if I'm going to love as Jesus loves me, then I have to change. Now think about that, Betty. If those are the virtues I am inculcating, that I am habitually trying to get after, then by habit, by the practice of it, I become more kind, more
Yes.
generous, more merciful, more gracious,
Yes.
right? That, if we could all use our time doing that, find your apostolate of one. Maybe you have more than one in your living environment today. But COVID-19 is going to be with us now.
For a while.
Best guess is it's put yourself next spring, right? We've got time. We still have time to do this. It's not like we're out of lockdown.
Right.
We have time to gain these habits because those are the behaviors we can change in this time out to bring back into the environment in a completely changed way. Let me tell you something about my study of pandemics over the many, many centuries that we've had pandemics. Always coming out, it's a new era. We have new ideas, we have new technologies, we have new societal awareness.
Yep.
There is great things that come after pandemics. And wouldn't it be amazing if all of us have become kinder, have become merciful, have become patient. Imagine that, patience as a global society. Wow,
Uh,
right?
that
So,
would be
but
amazing.
that it's not magic. It's not like all of us are. I'm patient. God gives us the virtues, right? That's the thing. God gives us all virtues, but it's like He gives us a guitar and a banjo and a
Yes,
mandolin and a violin. You gotta get them out and you gotta play them, and
yes,
you got to use them.
absolutely. I was reading this morning. I got this book and I'm doing some research, learning to lead like Jesus, and it
Uh-huh.
talks about the virtues: humility, love, accountability, relationship, teachability, discipline, gratitude, generosity, forgiveness, encouragement, faithfulness, all of these wonderful things. So Arturo from Facebook has a question, and I want to bring this up because not everybody is on timeout. There are some people that are out, and so his question is, what if I haven't felt the need to have a timeout to change my habits, businesses that I have to keep working on providing for my family and employees. So if I don't have that time to have that time out, then what do I do?
So Arturo, what I would recommend, since actually your apostolate is greater than one, you
Yes,
have an apostolate of maybe 10 or 50, right? You
yes,
still can practice, right? It's that you have the ability to be mindful about, okay, this person I find to be really like irritating, or this person does not live up to my standards. And I don't know how you deal with that. Do you get all harsh? Do you get all like, I'm the boss? Or do you're like, how do I make this easier for you? Versus, how, if I were doing that to Jesus, if I were responding to Jesus that way, how would Jesus respond to me? Right?
yes,
And then take that and respond to the person about it. The uh, my apostolate of one. The great thing about this is it's a quick access to holiness, because He knows how to punch every single one of my buttons. Right. Whereas the people that worked for me, when I used to lead, 1,200 people, right? They didn't punch many of my buttons.
no, they wouldn't dare, General Julie Bentz. And all of a sudden, you are General Julie Bentz. And
Right.
so when,
Right.
yeah, they wouldn't. But you know what, Julie? I'm thinking, in this question from Arturo, it's a very good question, and what I'm thinking is, because in the middle of change, and you know this because you've led through change, I've led through change, and so in the middle of change, people's minds are already predispositioned for something different. And so we talked about fertile ground. Where are your gifts landing? And today, right now, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this, because today, our virtues, like you're calling them virtues, our values, our virtues, are can land on fertile ground, even if the ground is of opposing view.
Sure. Of course.
Because we're in the middle of a pandemic, we're in the middle of where people are actually predispositioned for hearing something different, or for maybe change, even though they could be harsh on the outside. It leads us to a conversation where our, what did you call it,
The apostolate of
the
one, or the
apostolate of one. I love that word. That's a perfect word. Where the apostolate of one, or 100, or 1,000, or 10,000, the ground is a lot more fertile than it
and
was.
and I agree, Betty, because right now we are surrounded in the pandemic with, the sickness and death,
Yes,
uncertainty, injustice. I mean, the things that are popping up now that
yes,
are kind of in our face, and it's a brilliant moment in time. Brilliant, right? Because I stand in the truth of faith, hope, and peace. And
mhm,
faith, hope, and peace meets death, sickness, uncertainty, and injustice, and faith, hope, and peace, it always wins. Always, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, Arturo. That was a good question.
Yeah, wasn't that just it's a beautiful way to get into our next topic, because the virtues become ever so important to have, to put a spotlight on them and to become them and to make them our own. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So one of my ideas for a book that I am trying to write, having never done
Yes.
this before, I'm learning every day. The idea is that the working title right now is Values, Virtues, and Leadership, the Musings Across Three Administrations. And I define the values and the virtues as being, values are something we're inculcated with growing up, right? So a value might be hard work. A value might be, um, something that strikes you as um, uh, something that your family or your community really
Yeah.
sees as important. What's interesting about values, and this is why I think values and virtues are different. Values you kind of absorb as you grow up, and it just kind of becomes part of you, whether you practice them or not. It's something that you always see as that you want. But my values and your values may be different, and I might think your values are wrong, that they're not, that those are wrong, or perhaps even bad values, right? So our
Mhm.
value system, our value structure might be different. Virtues are not that you don't absorb virtue.
No.
Virtue you have to work at. There's a discipline that is a part of virtue, and virtue, everyone sees as good. There's no one who defines virtue as bad, right? And so the core virtues, if you think about the cardinal virtues,
Yeah.
the kind of overarching, for all virtues, what they call the charioteer of virtues is, of course,
Yes.
prudence, right? And prudence is best thought of as knowing when to do the right thing at the right time. A lot of people call it common sense. It's understanding, yeah, this is the right thing to do, and this is the right moment to do it in. That's prudence, right? And in its wake of that charioteer come the other core cardinal virtues of justice, of fortitude, or we'd know it as courage, the courageousness, or temperance, moderation, right? So all of those coming in, and under those four cardinal virtues come all these virtues that we talk about: mercy and
Yes.
peace and grace, etc. Um, so that the virtues you have to practice, they don't come naturally. Hard work, inculcated in me in a very early age. I'll work hard. That was a real big thing for my dad. And But I don't have to practice it. It kind of, I was inculcated at a young age. So anyway, what I notice is that, as a people, this is the premise of the book, is that I bring around me friends who have like values, right? And so
Yes.
I think we can all agree that that's how friendships occur, and that's the
Yeah.
lifelong friendships are the ones that have similar value structures. So when you are elected as president of the United States, you're going to bring this, you're going to be weighted to a singular value structure, because all the folks you bring in with you at that top leadership level all kind of row with that same value structure. And so while I never got to staff any president, I did get to staff a lot of their leadership. And I saw common values in each administration, and the value structure they were core American values, each one
Mhm.
of them. And it's interesting because the value structure enabled them to um, uh, do certain things as a government, as a nation, that sat well with that value structure. So President Bush, for example, I would say if you look at the 6 core values of America, liberty, unity, equality, diversity, self-government, and individualism, right? I would say President Bush really valued unity.
Yes,
Um, and you saw that across all of his leadership,
very much so.
right? And so, with that kind of core value structure in the top administration, he could rebuild government. I mean, he built the Department of Homeland Security. He revamped, he tore apart and rebuilt the intelligence community. I mean, that was huge, right? All
Mhm.
the things he was able to do because that value structure sat at the top leadership. I would say President Obama, the core American value he really was in tune with was diversity, and you saw that across all the leadership that he brought in. And I don't mean just color, creed, race, or anything that as
No,
well. It was like
it's
if you
more.
had 6 sides of an argument, he wanted all 6 points at the table being part of the dialogue, right? Um, what that meant was where we couldn't move nearly as fast as we did under the Bush administration for moving policy through. What we were able to do was very complex, and it was very, it gave us the time and kind of that complexity to wrestle with very complex issues. With Trump, I would say he really embraces the American value of individualism, right? Where every individual can take care of themselves and do what they need to do. And so he incorporates that value structure. And so what he's able to do with that is very different than what Bush and Obama could do with their value structure. And so, it makes sense to me that, I have these people who really resonate with a particular value. Unfortunately, each of these values have blind spots, right? Where you kind of fall into these pits. And so
Yes,
I
absolutely.
yeah, so my hypothesis is that there are probably virtues that all of these can practice that allow them to put safety nets over the pits, over these blind spots that each of these values have inherently in their nature. And those virtues, there's a discipline that needs
Mhm.
that you need to be willing to do. And as a leader in any leadership position, if you understand your value system, you then can make the next step to where are those blind spots that you've got, and then with the virtues, which ones will put a safety net over those for you. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's
no,
the
uh, y-
30,000-mile view on something that I've got like 30 pages written.
yeah, but you have a lot more in your mind about that, and I can't wait to hear not only as you continue to unfold the book, your thoughts, putting your thoughts on paper, because I know that your experience is so deep and is so desired, but your view of it is so amazing in turning very complex things into very simple. I see, for example, in a collaborative leadership style like Obama, where it's so funny. One of my senior leaders used to say, "Can you just please make a decision and let's just move on?"
Yeah.
And that's the double-edged sword of that collaborative nature is yeah, I can veto everybody, but I want to hear everybody, and because I want to hear everybody, you must be patient, because the decision on the other side is going to be a better quality decision.
Right.
And then, with somebody President Trump, oh, let's just get this done. Okay, well, wait a minute, but I have this idea or I have this view, and so there's pluses and minuses, but we get things done quickly, right? And you want things done quickly, so how can you bring the homeostasis, I call it, of both, right? Cohabitate with both. There's a question from Judy. What do you see is the valuable, good, positive changes as the valuable, good, positive changes that will come out of the pandemic, both from people's personal and business perspectives? What do you see are the positives in perspectives from a personal and business view that will come out in a positive way from the pandemic?
Right. Well, the pandemic is not going to make a positive or negative uh, outcome, right? It gives us the environment by which we can make the changes, right? Um, so from a brass tacks of technology, we're already seeing the incredible changes that every business will have to deal with in terms of telework, the video conferencing. Just from a technology perspective, that's becoming super simple. Remember back in March having this conversation with some folks who were more, I won't say scared of technology, but were a bit resistant to change
Yes,
in
resistant to the word. Yeah.
technology, and you got them on Zoom, and they were like, they became Zoom ninjas like immediate overnight. I'm thinking this is great, and you're just seeing this connectivity. Like just last weekend, I was able to reach out to a good friend of mine who's in India, who's got a Bible study that she's part of in Australia, and we had almost every time zone on this Zoom call for a conversation on faith, hope, and peace, right? And the whole COVID conversation.
Yes.
And when we see just kind of those like technologies, you're going to see a lot more of what type of changes in society will start hovering around those things. But for the real fundamental change of how do we become a just society, right?
Mm.
How do we use this time of um, of unrest and to push us into a really good trajectory for our children and our children's children, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be dependent on the changes that occur in Julie's heart and in Betty's heart and in Arturo's heart and in Judy's heart, right? What's occurring right now that puts us out of timeout back into this environment where we have changed our behavior so that this new environment gets us into a really good positive outcome, right?
So it's not really what's happening, it's really our reaction to what's happening and how we choose to utilize the fertile ground and the time. The fertile ground to address Arturo's question, and then the time for those of us who have chosen to stay in isolation. Talk about that. I do want to ask you this question, and I know I asked you privately, I think about a week ago. You've chosen, and a lot of people are going out grocery shopping. You mentioned you're getting everything brought in, and you've stayed pretty much inside. Um, Tell us about that choice for you.
Yeah. So, in my apostolate of one, there is a heightened fear in what we present to others and what others present to us, right? And so, what I discovered is that um, there's enough anxiety in his world that I don't need to add to it. And so I don't need to. I can manage from the house. There are things that everyone understands that you give up in being locked down, but that's part of my apostolate, is that my love for him is such that Jesus would just stay locked down with him until he was ready to go back out. And so that's what I choose to do as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Julie. We have 6 more minutes, so I want to read to you some of the comments, and if you'd like to uh, just comment on the comments that are being said. Mina says, "Thank you, Major General Julie, for sharing an engaging and compelling story with your leadership legacy." Your leadership legacy, I love it. Um, uh, we asked Judy's, Corey saying, "This is the perfect time for us to invest time in developing our virtues." I would agree. Maria, General Julie Bentz, you get to write this book. It is perfect timing for this, as I feel we have gotten away from the basics. I am excited to read it. I feel your passion. Thank you. So great comments. Be kind to people with different opinions and learn. from
That's right.
Gabrielle.
And let me tell you, this is, we are a society that we speak first and we listen last,
Yes.
right? And how wonderful to give us an opportunity to listen deeply, right? There's a sweetness that we have lost in listening deeply. And for me, I have to listen deeply to God speaking in my life, because from there then I can listen deeply to what other people are saying of their life, right? And without being attuned to God's word, I don't have the well. I don't have that the depth necessary to listen deeply to others. And I will tell you, for anyone who's been able to crack that code, you'll understand there's sweetness there.
Yes,
Thank you for the
there is.
comment.
And yeah, and we talk about, we've often in the mornings in the last 106 days that we've been together, we've often talked about the importance of being in solitude and in real prayer and meditation. Because prayer is one thing, meditation is a deeper kind of a prayer, and how important it is so that we can listen to God's whisper.
Yeah.
And it has to be quiet so
Yeah.
that we can hear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
God
sweet.
laughs, and we can hear him laugh.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
soft and it's beautiful. Yeah.
Uh, let's see. I don't see any other questions. We have some comments. Hold on. Be kind to people with different opinions. I love that, Gabrielle. Um, uh, Mina, prayer is a muscle. Practice to develop. Make it part of your daily walk.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, and wonderful to be able to virtually meet General Julie Bentz after reading about her in Dr. Betty's book. God bless you.
Ah,
So she read all about you in the book.
yay! Oh, good for you
Yay.
reading Betty's book. I was so blessed and uplifted by it.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you both. This time is truly a time of gratitude and blessings with
Yeah,
perspective on what we value.
that's right.
From Maria. So compassionate of you, General. What can you suggest for those living with others who aren't? It is very problematic, and that's, is it very problematic and adds risk? How are you coming with continued isolation? How are you coping with continued isolation? Rachel is asking.
I think I'm discovering I'd have made a great. I would have made a great cloistered nun. I find that I've got all the things that I really love around me. So I don't find it nearly as troubling as a lot of other people do. I have learned that I would say that my husband is the extrovert. I'm more of the introvert, though I've learned all the extrovert kind of coping skills. Uh, so yeah, so I also have a very large family in Oregon who tend to call me very, very regularly and check up on me. So and I will tell you, to be honest, and if I may, so the first 2 months of lockdown was horrible. I totally get mental illness or the mental challenges that people have in lockdown. I get it. It was horrible. I fought it. I was unhappy. I was not a pleasant person to live with. I mean, I totally got why people get divorced during these crises. I understand it. I was there, and but I knew that it was me struggling with the situation, and I needed to get me right with God. And so I told my husband, I'm like, I'm taking a week. I don't want you to come down to the basement. I'm just going to do a retreat. I'm going to focus just on what is God doing in my life. I got this book. Let's see if I can find it here. I got this book, 33 Days to Greater Glory. And I read this. This is a book of that looks at the Father's love for his child, called me, Julie. And Jesus reflecting God's love to me, Julie,
Oh,
right? It's amazing book for anyone who's struggling at home. It takes you through the Gospel of John, and it got me out of my funk and into what is Jesus doing during this COVID. And that this is kind of where I've come from with my idea of, oh my gosh, it's time out.
Mhm.
It's get back to the basics. It's I got this time to work on things that he wants me to work on, not for just so that I'm ready at the end of COVID-19, but I'm ready for eternity.
Anything,
We,
yes.
we, we only have a couple years here on earth to get this going in the direction that God wants for all of his children, everyone, as he created this world to be, right? And
Yeah.
it's diverse, and everybody gets a say in it, because we are, each one of us, built irreplaceable, indispensable, unrepeatable, and made for more, right? That's who we are. And I'm passionate about this. And I hear the woundedness of folks who are locked in and just feeling like they're in a cage. There are things that I would recommend, and reach out to others if you're feeling that way, because you don't want to suffer alone in this one. If you're not hearing the sweet whisper of God, where you're running to a isolated corner, then reach out and have people, and just
Yes.
ask if they're comfortable praying for you. I'd be comfortable
Absolutely.
praying for you.
Yes, absolutely. So 33 Days of Greater Glory is the name of the book. Rachel, you asked for the book again. Phil Rosencrantz, one of my professors at Pepperdine and a dear friend, says, thank you. I love your virtue dialogue and look forward to your book. We've run just about out of time. I want to leave everybody with the last words I asked you when I interviewed you for my book. And I said, what would you say to the people that are going to be reading the book? And at the time, you said, go for broke.
That's right.
You
That's
remember
right.
that?
I
Actually, you said, go for broke, man. That's how
That's
you
right.
said it. We're,
Go for
we're just
broke.
having such a good time.
You got to live on the edge, otherwise you're taking too much space.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. General Julie Bentz,
Thank you,
a
Betty.
dear friend and an amazing leader, writing a book on values, virtues, and leadership. We have to get you to finish that book. So whatever I can do to support you, just let me know. If you need an accountability partner, I'm raising my hand. I'll be your accountability partner. Let's get this done because the world is waiting for it.
Amen.
Thank
Amen.
you, Julie. Thank you so much. I love you dearly. Big, big hugs to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.